Welcome to the January 28th, 2020 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And we have another great show here for you today. You're probably wondering if we're going to talk about some inflammatory subjects, and the answer to that is no. We will be talking about them on Thursday.
What is the subject?
So there was a recent and very much anticipated release of a fan translation for Goemon 2 and 3 for the Super Famicom, and there is quite a controversy going on right now about the translation choices in the third game in particular.
So we're going to have an in-depth discussion about that, as you said. For Corrective Consciousness on Thursday. That'll be our primary focus.
And that will include a lot of opinions, so like if this is something that you are interested in hearing, please move on to listening to that on Thursday. However, please be aware, that it's probably a sensitive subject. So if if you would rather not, that's fine. That's fine as well. But we do have some other subjects here. So first of all, I wanted to go over some cool new announcements that were made. Did you hear about the Wasteland Remastered being announced?
No, I actually really don't know almost anything about Wasteland. And there's a second one, right? There's also Wasteland 2?
So the way that it works is that the original game was called Wasteland. It was a game that was made by or released by Electronic Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like the kind of like the what was that Thor game that you've mentioned in the past? What's that game called?
Oh, the really old DOS one?
Yeah.
Oh,
What's that one called?
God of Thunder.
God of Thunder. Okay, so I wasn't too far off.
Available on
Thor
Steam.
Game. So very similar overhead old school RPG, Windows or DOS RPG, called Wasteland. This was ended up being the predecessor to the Fallout series.
Oh. Okay.
So a lot of the people that worked on Wasteland would then move on to work on the Fallout series, and therefore, some of the same people went on to make more recent classics such as Fallout New Vegas and was it the Outer Worlds as well, which is what's currently being made. But some of the people from the original team, kind of during the Kickstarter era of games that wanted to get sequels, from more independent studios, along with like Shenmue 3 and things like that. They ended up splintering off and making their own Wasteland 2. So their goal was to make something that was more similar to the Fallout 1 and 2 than Fallout 3 or New Vegas.
Yeah, they're very different kinds of games. Like for those who may not be aware, because a lot of people started Fallout with 3. Fallout 1 and 2 is kind of post-apocalyptic, like Baldur's Gate. They're like isometric, just Dungeons and Dragons games.
So the going theory is that like the more old school sort of experience was playing Wasteland 2. And the games can be very difficult, as the game could be very difficult. But it ultimately is supposed to lend itself to having more flexibility in the kind of character that you want to be, in what kind of game you want to play, that kind of thing. As the simpler that you get with graphics, those kinds of things tend to be. If you're in first person, you have those limitations of having to you can only have so much detail in those games. You know what I mean? So
that's when the text really comes in and saves the day.
Sure. A lot of what makes games like this is the storytelling. And that's what's great about them, and also the challenge.
Yeah, it would have to be. I mean, like, if we go even more old school, like the old text adventure games, there were no graphics. You better tell a good story because that's literally all you have.
Yeah. So this is pretty cool because people that are that were maybe curious about the first game, you could still buy the first game right now, the original Wasteland. But along with any kind of RPG with that kind of vintage, you're going to have problems like quality of life problems. Where to enjoy the story that they told, the fun that is included with the creativity in those kinds of stories, you're going to have things that were difficult about the game that were difficult for the wrong reasons. So Wasteland Remastered is kind of like a promise to retain the old storylines and setting of the original game, but with updated graphics and quality of life stuff. So essentially, an all-round better experience for the user, especially if you don't have the tolerance to play stuff that doesn't have the quality of life that current games do.
Yeah.
Which I think that's pretty cool.
And that actually leads to another topic. This is a few down your list, but I've been having a discussion about this a few days ago on Discord. The KOTOR rumor.
Yeah, so there's a rumor going around that KOTOR is being reimagined. This is, of course, the seminal BioWare classic after the Baldur's Gate and Infinity Engine games. BioWare made Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which is a really great classic, a fantastic game. It is by and large, basically a 3D Baldur's Gate kind of game, but in the Star Wars.
And that was the whole thing. Because I was having a discussion with somebody in Discord who was concerned, well, not even concerned, but was just asking why a remake would exist for this game, because apparently certain things are tied to gameplay in KOTOR, like some of the storytelling can be.
Sure.
Now, I have not played KOTOR, so I can't give my expert opinion on, this wouldn't matter and this would and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I was saying that the target audience for this thing, well, with Star Wars, it's a bit different. We just had Jedi Fallen Order, so if you release another Star Wars game, people will probably be excited just anyway. Not to mention Star Wars, the name alone is enough to attract people, so there is that. But I would imagine that the primary audience for Star Wars KOTOR would be the people who already know Star Wars KOTOR. And the thing is, it's well, why don't you just go back and play the original game then? Well, because, again, I have not played KOTOR, I might be wrong on this one, but in general, when you go back to 15, 20, 30-year-old games, maybe that was just how games were played back then, but the gameplay mechanics may not have aged well now. Like Final Fantasy VII, people swear up and down it's the best game ever made, and they're hyped about the remake, but it's do you want to go, I know it tells a great story, but do you want to go back and actually play through the battle system again? I mean, you can, it's playable, but now that FF14 and 15 exists, going back to strictly turn-based, wait for the animations to play out combat just feels like you could do worse. You could do Final Fantasy 1 where you target a guy that doesn't exist if the enemy dies, but
sure.
But the battle system for FF7 is just kind of slow. I'm aware it's post FF6 where you have a bar so you can hurry and get ahead of the enemy if you have a fast bar, so it's not just waiting your turn, but it's still slow compared to just run around and swing your sword in 15. Wouldn't you like the story but with more welcoming gameplay? That's what I would assume they would go for with KOTOR if they are going to remake it.
Okay. Well, I mean, they've tried several different things with the KOTOR license. The Knights of the Old Republic was a hugely influential title. It had its own sequel, Knights of the Old Republic 2, which a lot of people really loved that game, especially with the fan mod. That adds a lot of the cut content that was that's actually an Obsidian game. Speaking of of games that were made by Fallout people.
Yeah, right.
But they even did like an MMO based off of this setting because it was so successful. Called the Old Republic.
Yeah, it's just the Old Republic. So it's just Tor.
Now, what you may not realize is that one of the most influential games of last generation was Mass Effect, the whole Mass Effect series. This was, without the Knights of the Old Republic, there would be no Mass Effect, and that is absolutely for certain. Mass Effect is essentially a Knights of the Old Republic, but without the license.
And what's kind of funny is, even with Mass Effect, people say that playing Mass Effect 1 today is like, even though the game was great.
Mass Effect 2, though, is like one of the best games of all time. And so is 3. I really love 3. Depending on your opinion of the story, but 2 is absolutely where it's at. One of the most influential games. This
is getting a little tangential, I'll admit. But like everybody famously railed against Mass Effect 3's ending, but at the same time, I didn't hear them talk about...
What else did you want to do?
No, not that. What I was going to say is that they didn't talk about anything else. So basically what they're saying is that 99% of Mass Effect 3 is freaking brilliant.
Oh, yeah, no, and it is. The characterization, the conversations, the dialogue, everything's great, just like it was in 2. But, moving on from that, I don't want to put too much more time into this, but my point was, you can actually buy Knights of the Old Republic in several ways, the original version of this game. You could buy it on iOS, you could buy it on Steam, and you could buy it on Xbox One currently, right now. It is still a fantastic game to play, however, a boost in graphics, so it looks better by today's standards, would certainly be appreciated. That's probably one of the major things. Plus added content. I'm sure they're going to add a whole bunch of content.
Actually, you know what would be interesting? I mean, this is the wrong game, but if they ever remade KOTOR 2 and like officially put all that stuff in...
I mean, they basically almost did. I mean, they included workshop support in order to specifically allow you to download that mod.
Oh, okay.
They all but officially sanctioned that fan mod. I mean, they did everything they could in order to make it easy for you to play that.
Because I'm kind of reminded of Resident Evil 1's remake on the GameCube. I didn't realize this until years later, but you know the whole thing with Lisa Trevor?
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, she was originally intended for Resident Evil 1, but died on the cutting room floor. So, that wasn't weird new content. That was restored content.
But, going off of that, I mean, the graphics are the most noticeable thing.
Yeah.
The story's great, the dialogue's great, the writing's great. Even the gameplay is still a lot of fun by today's standards, but just as kind of like the best looking games of that era are a little sterile looking. Like you go into the environments and they look a little sterile because the textures couldn't be as nuanced or couldn't have as many like NPCs in the background while you were doing something or whatever.
Yeah, there's simple tech limitations, and also, I mean, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic was not an MMO, but I'll say it anyway. With any MMO, if you want the game to run at all with all those people using it, you're gonna have to give a little bit of a dip to the background stuff. Look at vanilla WoW. There's not much going on, but that wasn't really the point.
Yeah, and another thing is character customization. I'm sure will be extremely important in the new one. Whereas you had a few options in the original version of Knights of the Old Republic, but I'm sure that you'll be able to go whole hog into character customization in the reimagined KOTOR. Keep in mind this is a rumor as well, but I think it's well founded considering BioWare's recent gaffes.
I was going to say, I was just going to mention that. It would be a great comeback.
with Anthem not doing so well, with Mass Effect Andromeda being basically forgotten about.
Yeah, Andromeda. I don't know what happened with Andromeda. I know there was like manipulation behind the scenes with EA. With Anthem, they just got the rug pulled out from under them straight up.
Yeah. So I want them to succeed. I mean, I was a huge BioWare fan back in the day. I was a huge Mass Effect fan. I love the Mass Effect trilogy. I love it. But let's see if they can make a comeback. I mean, EA has been putting out good games recently. Maybe they've kind of had a change of management style.
I hope they have.
Any luck.
I was gonna say I really hope they don't go. See, you got your Fallen Order. We know how to do it, and then
Fallen
just go
Order,
back to their ways.
By all accounts, I haven't played it myself, but I will. Was a fantastic game. It was like the Dark Souls of Star Wars games.
Yeah, I heard it was Dark Souls-ish. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And then they managed to make a single player game and that didn't gouge you while you were playing it.
I mean, what a concept.
Yeah,
it's really almost crazy. Like you'll gain loyalty by not fucking the people who give you money.
Yeah. So maybe they'll continue on and do something like cool with the KOTOR franchise. But moving on, this was a really cool surprise. Code Mystics made an update to the PS4, Vita, GOG, and Steam versions of Fatal Fury: Mark of the Wolves.
Of all games in the world to update.
Well, these games exist on all of those systems, so it's not like they didn't have current versions running. So Mark of the Wolves is one of the best fighting games ever made. It is the kind of fighting game that is so fun to play that even people that don't like fighting games all that much will love to play it. And as you get better, as more skilled, the more skilled you are, it still gets better to play. It's one of those games that's very accessible to people that haven't played a whole lot of fighting games, but is even better for people who are fighting game veterans. So it's one of those rare games where most of the really like high level games are only really super enjoyable by people who really know them well. But Mark of the Wolves is a fantastic game. It's definitely like in the top fighting games of all time. Fantastic game. So the versions on that used to be out there was made by .emu. And .emu has been known to have okay ports. Generally speaking, they're not the most accurate out there. They tend to have a lot of really good original titles. Their original titles have been fantastic. Like they made a reimagining of of Wonder Boy and Dragon's Trap.
Mm-hmm.
They are currently making the Windjammers sequel, and they are currently making Streets of Rage 4. But however, their emulation is not considered the best by a lot of people, either for lag purposes or inaccuracies in other ways. So Code Mystics is the other company that has been porting a lot of SNK's games out there on PS4 especially. And they make the online versions. So it's kind of confusing with a lot of SNK's games because there tends to be several versions of their games on any given system. So you look at Samurai Shodown 5 and you're like, which version of Samurai Shodown 5 should I pick? The Code Mystics one or the Arcade Archives one? I talk about Arcade Archives all the time. The Hamster version is a straight up port. It is excellent and very accurate. However, it has no frills, it has no extra modes, it has no online.
Twin B bells and whistles.
Exactly. It does have twin bells.
Ironically.
But the online features are probably limited to just high score tables, and that's it. Code Mystics actually has online code. So you could play Mark of the Wolves against somebody.
Oh, that's cool.
So the .emu one versions of these games have been highly criticized, and Code Mystics, like SNK, contracted Code Mystics to go to the game, update the new game, give it a facelift, and also give it the really good netcode that they have for, that they have included in other games that they've done for them. So this totally replaces your .emu version and replaces it with a whole hog better version of the game, and the emulation is excellent. It's very, very good. So I definitely this is a new time for people to pick up Mark of the Wolves. If you already own it, this will just update. So that's the good news too.
Nice.
And then kind of in the same line, there is the Mortal Kombat collection online. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I think so.
So apparently the European ratings board has rated this game. It was like previously unannounced, but it is a collection including remastered versions of the first 3 Mortal Kombat games. Which sounds excellent, because I think only the PS3 really has an accurate representation of the arcade versions of Mortal Kombat 1 through 3 currently. I think all the other versions are like ports of, like the Super Nintendo versions and things like that. It's kind of weird how Mortal Kombat works.
Yeah, I think on GOG it might be like something weird, like the PC version.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who wants to play that? You generally want to play the arcade versions, because that's what was played in, back in the 90s. They're at full speed.
Yeah, I would go with consoles, just if there are weird extras on consoles. Like this is what threw everybody. Wasn't it called something weird, like the Ultimate Mortal Kombat Collection or something? So people thought it would be like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but like, no.
Yeah. Well, this might include Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 rather than vanilla Mortal Kombat 3.
Was Ultimate on arcades?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Did it have the stupid bullshit like the Galaga minigame, depending on the answer you chose at the end of the game?
No, but I mean, like, who's gonna port the Saturn version of?
No, just Sega Genesis.
Yeah, I don't know, but like, you want to play the actual,
Well, of course, yeah. You want to get the arcade version of like Ermac or somebody.
Yeah. So
I was gonna say
let
Smoke,
me see.
But he was in the original.
Yeah, Ultimate Mortal Kombat was an arcade game. So
okay, they had so many damn characters in that game. Like, I couldn't.
It was Mortal
like
Kombat
Smash...
Trilogy that was not.
The game that was called Trilogy was on the 64 and the PS1, and they had a different exclusive secret character. But what I think PS1 might have had just more characters anyway. But what I was going to mention is that it felt like Smash before Smash when you first played Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, because there were so many damn characters on the screen, like on the character selection screen. It just blew me away at the time. when you play Mortal Kombat 1, there's like 7 characters or something, and then Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 comes along, there's like 20. It was amazing.
Yeah, we really should get the N64 version of Trilogy. I mean, that clearly must be the best, or maybe the Gamecom or the R-Zone.
For Trilogy?
Yeah.
I think you want the PS1, because
you don't want the Gamecom version?
As tempting as that may be. No, because like each game has a secret character called Chameleon, but one of them is spelled with a C, one of them is spelled with a K. I forgot which is which, but I want to say the N64 has the one where it cycles through Katana, Melina, Jade. I don't know if it's just those 3. Maybe there's a 4th, but that might be it. Whereas the I think it's the PS1 version's Chameleon is all the ninjas, like Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Reptile, Noob Saibot, Ermac. That's cool as shit.
Yeah. So, like, Trilogy added Raiden and Bakara as they appeared in Mortal Kombat 2.
Wait, who? Oh, Baraka, you mean?
Baraka, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Johnny Cage was also added to the roster, this time portrayed by the new actor. And keeps his moves from MK2. Bosses Goro, Kintaro, and Motaro, Shao Kahn are playable
Yeah,
characters from
that
the
was the
start.
coolest. You could never play as Kintaro. Like, that was the coolest. Even Goro, like, I don't think he showed up in a playable capacity for real until, like, MK4 or so. I think I might even be wrong about that, but I want to say MK4. You could
Yeah.
play as Motaro and Shao Kahn in MK3, or in Ultimate MK3. I forgot if you needed codes for that or not, but I remember it was the coolest thing.
And PC, Saturn, and PlayStation versions also contain alternate versions of Jax, Kung Lao, and Kano, and
Very nice.
Raiden.
Very nice.
2 new secret characters appear as well, depending on the version of the game.
By the way,
Most versions have Chameleon.
Yeah, Chameleon. Can I just say, by the way, I love that you're saying Raiden, which should be the correct pronunciation, but just not in Mortal Kombat.
Whatever.
They always say Raiden, and they're freaking wrong. even though it's canonical name, so they're right, but they're wrong.
Chameleon is a semi-transparent ninja who rapidly switches between all the other male ninjas.
Yeah, so it's that Chameleon, and not the Katana, Melina, Jade Chameleon.
The Nintendo 64 version, like you said, replaced him with a female character named Chameleon with a K.
Oh, okay, the female one's the K, alright.
Who switches between the other female ninjas.
Yeah, but I think there's only, like, the 3, though. It's like, that's lame.
Katana, Melina, and Jade, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Like, At least you get the one you want faster, right? With the ninjas, like, you just gotta wait for that cycle to keep going.
Anyway, this Mortal Kombat Collection Online promises to have arcade versions that will be able to play online with other people. Keep in mind this is a rumor, but come on, it was rated. It's coming out. I'm calling it. Moving on. I do want to remind people that we do have Sega Ages Shinobi and Fantasy Zone just released on Switch this week.
Delicious.
Shinobi, in particular, I was super excited about because they added like a whole bunch of new features, including like power-ups and stuff like that. Shinobi is a fantastic game.
Is this the original one, like the one that was ported to the Master System?
Yeah, the arcade. It's the arcade.
Well, yeah, no, I'm saying the one that was ported, but yeah, that's a hard game too.
Yeah,
I remember
of course.
It was cool though, because I think even in the original, you can jump into the background and back into the foreground.
Yeah, it's you do like a high leap to a high area.
It kind of reminds me of the old Fatal Furies, where there was a foreground and background plane to fight on, so whatever was in one plane could not hurt you, and vice versa.
Yeah, the closest thing that probably was an analog at the time was Rolling Thunder. It was a ninja version of Rolling Thunder. You couldn't go into doors in this game, but
no, but like, you go into doors in Rolling Thunder.
In Rolling Thunder, you could.
Yeah.
And that was in itself was similar to elevator action in some ways.
That's true. Yeah.
But the gigantic leap that you make from like the lower area to the higher area is definitely a Rolling Thunder thing.
Okay.
So yeah, Shinobi is like Sega's take on Rolling Thunder, but it's a fantastic game on its own.
And then Rolling Thunder 3 was Sega's take on Rolling Thunder.
But Fantasy Zone is a fantastic game, very similar to Defender.
I wish I had the opportunity to play Fantasy Zone.
Welcome to my Fantasy Zone, Lotus.
Well, that's the Bayonetta, right?
Yes.
But yeah, like Fantasy Zone's been like in every arcade or Yakuza arcade game since like 0.
Yeah, but this is obviously with more features added. And
well, Judgment has a rapid fire feature, which ironically you could argue it's a detriment because it completely renders worthless the purchasable rapid fire feature that goes away after like 30 seconds.
This has more than just that. These are Criterion versions of these games. You got to remember the best versions of any of these games thus far. So even previous Sega Asia's releases of these games pale in comparison to the new one. So keep that in mind. Any Sega Ages version is going to be the best version of that given game at that given time, which is a fantastic thing to claim because it's lovely what they do. M2 makes these games and they're fantastic. Then there's the Arcade Archives Switch version and PS4 version of Double X Mission from a company called UPL. This is a really great shmup release or shoot 'em up release. Definitely seek this out because there aren't very many ports of UPL games, and most of them are imperfect up until now. So definitely seek this out. Their games are very good, but very underrepresented. So definitely check that out. I picked it out. There's a couple other rumors I wanted to talk about while we were at it. So apparently there's a rumor going around that Sony bought 3 companies. Kojima Productions. I don't think that's very far-fetched. I'm sure they had a large stake in them to begin with, a large investment in them to begin with. Remedy, which that one is kind of a surprise, but not terribly, but they've been more buddy with Microsoft recently. You know Remedy, right?
I recognize the name, but I forgot what they did.
Max Payne 1 and 2.
Oh, that was okay. That was them.
Alan Wake.
Those were they. Oh, okay, Alan Wake. Yeah.
Control recently, which is
Gotcha.
some people's game of the year.
Liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be very good. And another company called Housemarque, which I don't know Housemarque. But I think it makes sense for them to own these things. I just don't. I don't know whether it's true. I believe the Kojima Productions one. Absolutely. I don't know what you think regarding this.
I don't know whether I believe it, but in a way, I kind of hope it's not true because Kojima just broke out of a company's oppressive rule like 5 minutes ago and made Kojima Productions, you know?
Yeah, but they were
Sony
huge.
is not Konami, I understand that, but still, it feels a little weird.
They were hugely instrumental in making in the making of Death Stranding.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't have been able to make it without them.
Yeah.
So Housemarque, oh man, I've played several of these games. I just didn't realize it. So they made Outland. Do you remember Outland?
Nope.
It's kind of like the Ikaruga-ish platformer. Do you remember that?
Not.
It's kind of like a Metroidvania, but like you could switch polarities.
The only thing that sounds at all to me like an Ikaruga platformer is Silhouette Mirage.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, no, that was a popular game last generation.
Okay.
Super Stardust HD, which was a fantastic PS3 game. Let me see here.
I have never even heard of either of those.
Oh, it's a twin stick shooter that is a sequel to a game on the Amiga, but it was really good.
By the way, speaking of that stuff, I should announce real quick that speaking of twin stick shooters, Strictly Limited Games just recently released limited quantities of PS4 and Switch copies of Xenocrisis.
There you go.
So that's pretty rad.
Yeah, that is rad. I'm thinking about getting the Genesis version of it just because that's the platform. That's the native platform.
What a box, too.
Yeah. But they made Resogun, which was a big launch title for the PS4.
Title.
That was also Defender-like.
Oh, wait a minute. If those people made Resogun, then does that mean they also made Nex Machina?
I was just about to say that. That was their last game, was Nex Machina.
Because both of those are like insane light and particles and crazy shit happening. Like they're very basic arcade games, but they're supposed to be. But they look so freaking gorgeous and have such great soundtracks.
Yeah, no. So this is a cool company. So that I think is the most believable of them all.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Yeah. Remedy is a bigger company than all of those actually. To be honest, because Kojima Productions made Death Stranding in conjunction with Guerrilla Games, which probably did the majority of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
On that game. So I would say. I don't. Remedy's like the outstanding one. I don't. I still think they may buy that one because they're a cool company. with a bunch of great beloved games under their belt. But who knows? A couple other things here. Earth 2 Dark Knight skin added to all versions of Batman Arkham Knight.
That's kind of funny.
Like, did you see this storyline?
It's just funny. No, I didn't. But it's just funny because like years later, like one more skin.
Well, what happened here? This is you'll actually very much appreciate this. So this skin actually was always in the game. But what had happened was it was an exclusive to only certain events where you would get a code to unlock it.
Okay.
And what they did was they were like, kind of like what they did with Infamous, where they had like the pre-order only weapon like added to the game like much later after Infamous had already been out for a long time.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like a punishment to the pre-order people.
Yeah, exactly. So
I wish Bloodborne would do that.
So they basically gave everybody free access to that suit, and it's a cool looking suit. It looks very similar to the Batman Beyond suit with the red bat on it, or similar to the Batwoman costume.
Sure.
So that's really neat, and this is also the first time that Europeans will have any sort of access to it, which is also pretty cool. Give you a reason to play. Also, just wanted to give a quick mention here to Terry Jones, rest in peace. He is the first Monty Python to die in a long time.
Yeah.
Monty Python member. Very, very sad that he passed away. He had a good long life, obviously, but still gonna miss him. As well as any of the other Pythons. Graham Chapman, of course, died a young man, unfortunately, and he, for all intents and purposes, was probably the best actor of the bunch, and that's why he was like the main character of all their movies. He was King Arthur in Holy Grail, and
Brian.
And he was Brian in Life of Brian. He was a fantastic actor and a great member, but unfortunately he passed away because of cancer. And Terry Jones, unfortunately, was one of the people that was the life and soul of Monty Python. So sad about that. It was kind of cool though that there's a pretty neat Twitter account called Cool Box Art. Do you follow them or see them every once in a while? Well, they posted the cover of Blazing Dragons, which features the voice of Eric Idle and Terry Jones. So
yeah, Blazing Dragons had a seriously star-studded cast.
Yeah, 2 of the Monty Pythons involved. So
and randomly a cameo by Cheech Marin. Okay.
Yeah, it's a shame. Also, in the same breath, incredibly big shock that Kobe Bryant passed away this weekend
really
as well.
Came out of nowhere. It was a helicopter crash.
Nobody. I mean, there's no way you could have.
Yeah, it's like a car accident. You don't just wait for it to happen. Like it's just like a terrible thing that suddenly occurred.
Yeah. It's certainly he was 41. With his 13-year-old daughter and a bunch of other people on a private helicopter in California.
Yeah, it's awful.
Say what you want about him. Complicated history, of course, but certainly an influential one.
Yeah, and a legendary player.
No mistaking it. One of the best basketball players of all time. In his day, the best. People always say was it Kobe or Jordan was the best player? Why even choose? Like they're both fantastic basketball players. Even to the point where like people like us who don't know anything about sports know who he is.
If I've heard his name, then he's famous.
Yeah. And this comes also the day after LeBron broke his record. LeBron James, which
LeBron James is another legend.
But he's still playing, so it's just craziness. So moving on from that, one of the least likely candidates for a remake. There's an early access version of a remake of Waxworks.
Yeah, what? Like the only if you unless you're one of the people who actually played it back in the day, if you know anything about Waxworks, which you may not, but if you know anything about it, it'll be its shockingly violent imagery. Like it's one of those games where I believe you have like a cursor and you click things to identify them, so it's just a bunch of still images that you look at and can do things within the game. But those images are gruesome by today's standards. Like, I can't believe they got away with that shit back then.
Yeah, so this is named Waxworks Curse of the Ancestors. Looks like it's going to be a first-person game, just like the original.
Sure.
So the original also was kind of a first-person grid-based dungeon crawler.
Okay.
And this looks to be more of a real-time first-person like horror game, but that's okay. I mean, that's to be expected with a
back when the best you could do was make a grid game, you made a grid game.
Yeah, it looks really neat.
Like today, you make grid-based dungeon crawlers for nostalgic purposes, not because you think like this is what gaming should be today. You know?
Sure, like Legend of Grimrock or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, Grimrock was very much a throwback to probably Stonekeep in particular, but games like that.
Yeah, I think this part of the conceit was that you go into like a wax museum, and then
which is already scary before anything even happens. Sometimes some people are afraid of wax museums, like in real life, because like those wax sculptures are incredibly accurate. Did you ever see that viral video of Arnold Schwarzenegger posing in a wax museum? Like, so people just looked right at him and they're like, "Oh, that's a very good sculpture of Arnold Schwarzenegger." And then he like reached out and said hi and scared the shit out of them.
My favorite one going around right now is that the wax Mark Zuckerberg looks more lifelike than the actual Mark Zuckerberg.
I have not seen that one
because he's pale and pasty.
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg looks like the Joker looks like a freaking alien. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's pretty cool, especially for the type of game that we like, for sure. Also, the shmup or shoot 'em up entitled Sister Royale gets a global release date. I'm pretty excited about this. I believe this is made by the same company who makes the Raiden series currently, and the Caladrius series. So Alpha System. So it's going to be released on the January 30th, which is pretty cool. So it will have a PlayStation 4 release, Xbox One, and PC. So can't beat that.
Cool.
And it will. It's already out on Switch in Japan. So hopefully a worldwide release for the Switch version sometime soon. But pretty cool stuff. I'm always happy to get a higher budget shmup out there for sure. And also, this is great. Devolver Digital has confirmed that House of the Gundead and Exit the Gungeon are coming later this year, which I can't wait for either of those. Yeah. House of the Gundead is, of course, an arcade game in the vein light gun shooter, kind of like House of the Dead. That will only be in arcades. However, Exit the Gungeon will be coming to basically every platform you can think of. I am excited about that because it was previously only Apple Arcade exclusive.
Yes.
So nobody wants that. Couple more things here. Speaking of fan translations that aren't very controversial, or a lot less controversial than the one we'll be talking about Thursday. There is an N64 version of Shiren the Wanderer that is getting a fan translation.
Yeah, so, I didn't even know that existed, an N64 Shiren the Wanderer.
There aren't very many RPGs for N64. They're famously.
I'm currently streaming one of them.
Yeah, and the most prominent ones are action RPGs, which again is the one that you're playing. That has action elements,
Quest
right?
64.
Yeah. That's an action-ish
like
game.
the combat system, as stupid as it's going to sound, is reminiscent of like Parasite Eve in that when the enemy attacks, you can try like physically dodging it instead of hoping the thing connects with you and says miss. Although it can still connect with you and say miss. Except unlike Parasite Eve, when it's your turn, the enemies just stand there and wait to get hit. But when it's their turn, you could try physically dodging.
So, for anybody who doesn't know, the Shiren the Wanderer series is kind of a almost like a spin-off of Dragon Quest V, I think it is. That sounds right. And the Shiren the Wanderer series has a life of its own outside of Dragon Quest. It doesn't have Dragon Quest characters in it anymore. But Shiren the Wanderer is essentially a really fun consoleized roguelike game. Probably the most famous roguelike series outside of America. In Japan, like this is it in terms of roguelikes. Like all of the major roguelikes come from this. In fact, it starts. The original Shiren the Wanderer is the start of the Mystery Dungeon series, which has a ton of spin-offs.
Yeah.
If you've ever played a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game, it is a spin-off of the Shiren the Wanderer series. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is like the big series, like the most popular, I would say, probably. Then there's also the Chocobo Mystery Dungeon series, which is also a spin-off of this. They make all kinds of flavors of the Mystery Dungeon games, and Shiren the Wanderer is like the core series. I did not know it had an N64 version, so it's kind of cool that this is being worked on.
Yeah.
Like Lotus said, there's barely any RPGs for this system. You can make
what
a
even
case.
Is there? There's Quest. There's apparently this. There's Ogre Battle. Is there anything else?
Paper Mario.
Oh, duh. Okay, all right.
Hybrid Heaven. You can make a case for.
Okay, I have no experience with that one.
But yeah, it's basically like a sci-fi story, but with like almost like wrestling. Like wild. RPG. It's not a wrestling game, but like the moves that you could do are turn-based, and like you can focus on specific parts of the body. So you could be like, hey, you attack this guy's thigh, so he'll like pick up the thigh of the bad guy.
That's almost like, well, that kind of makes me think of like Snatcher SD, where or ST Snatcher, where I'll shoot the radar so it can't target me very well. I'll shoot the tread so it can't move very well, or stuff like that.
Yep. Really cool stuff. One of the things that I recommend watching, if you can find it, I think it's on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. Game Center CX has an amazing multi-episode arc where Arino, the host, plays the original Shiren the Wanderer for the Super Famicom.
Oh, jeez.
And they translate this in the YouTube version, but it is a lot of fun to watch him like play through that series or that game, because roguelikes, everybody, if you know what roguelikes are, I mean, if you've watched Lotus play some Binding of Isaac or Baroque, like roguelikes are not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, if you die, you lose
everything.
In hardcore cases, everything. In softcore cases, achievements are saved, but your character loses everything.
So, the host of the game or of the show didn't know how to play roguelikes at all.
Yeah.
So he basically is learning how to play the entire genre, which is probably what happened to a lot of people who were playing that game in Japan
and you gotta learn how to play the entire genre with, some game's going to be your first.
Anything, yeah. So,
and mine was Baroque. Of all fucking games, it's like the most obscure one.
he learns how to play, and also learns like the tricks of playing that type of game. I absolutely recommend just watching it. Like, even if you don't want to play that type of game, knowing that you have permadeath and that only certain things carry over in this type of game, if at all. And there are other good games in the series. I recommend the Vita version is probably the best one right now. I think there is a mystery dungeon, a Pokemon mystery dungeon game coming out soon, if not out already. We've talked about that one before on the Switch. You could play that one, and that would be a fine introduction to this type of game. Especially since the Pokemon ones probably won't murder you quite nearly as much as this one will. But watch the Game Center CX version. It's so entertaining, and it's a lot of fun. He definitely learns over time how to play them, which is really neat. Moving on from that, the Sega Genesis Mini has been hacked to shit. You can currently now play every Genesis game ever on it.
Yay.
So if you own one of these, you could play, I think that includes, 32X and Sega CD games are included.
Very nice.
So... yeah, you can run Knuckles Chaotix all you want on this thing.
That's very nice.
You can add only 60 games to this, so you're not going to have your entire library. But I'm sure
the small price to pay.
I'm sure 60 games you could pick some of your favorites.
Time to buy 3 Genesis Minis.
Genesime.
Genesime and I.
But yeah, I think that's really cool, especially if you bought one of those and you want to get some more out of it. Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge announced. Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought that Mortal Kombat 1 was Scorpion's Revenge, but it is what it is. I thought Scorpion's existence was Scorpion's Revenge.
That's why he's yellow. Look it up. Let's see. Oh, Kingpin Reloaded was announced. This was pretty cool too. Did you see this?
No.
So Kingpin was a game that was released in 1999 by 3D Realms. It had a really cool open world kind of feel to it. It felt almost like a Deus Ex, but more crime related than sci-fi, than cyberpunk. And basically you climbed up your ranks. It's similar to kind of was it Bloodlines? Masquerade.
Vampire the Masquerade.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. That's what I meant. So, but it's less RPG, but more about faction choices and things like that in a first-person setting, and building your way up to having the Kingpin role, which is pretty cool. And it's neat that they are remastering this. 3D Realms has really been killing it with games lately. They've been publishing some real bangers. Recently, a Medieval is one of them. I love that game. That's a lot of fun. They released Ion Fury and all those other games too. Dusk.
Yeah, they're really nailing it.
Yeah, they've really these are New Blood Interactive games. I'm sorry. 3D Realms released. What else? Oh man, let me look up Ion Theory. They released quite a few games recently. Ion Fury Wrath was the one that I was trying to put my finger on here. Yeah, so 3D Realms, of course, was the old is actually the old Apogee software.
Yeah.
And made the Duke Nukem games once upon a time. So. Yeah,
Duke Nukem Original and Duke Nukem 3D.
Yep. And Commander Keen. Actually, that was made by the id guys, and they published it. But they published it.
Okay.
So, But really cool stuff. I mean, it's neat that they're going back to the well. I mean, they already remade what was it? Rise of the Triad, which was a lot of fun by a lot of people's standards. So really cool stuff. Just some other little things here. Skies of Arcadia dev Kenny Haruta is asking for support for a sequel.
That'd be cool.
Doesn't mean anything, obviously, but he wants people to at Sega and get some support going.
That would be great, because like the most recent thing you could play Skies of Arcadia on is the freaking GameCube.
You can play it on the Wii, technically.
Yeah, but like it was released for the GameCube, though.
I know. Only 2 versions of a very beloved game, and none of them are digital,
Yeah.
which is a big shame. That game could do like, speaking from a gigantic fan of it. My namesake is from it. That game could use some quality of life improvements.
Absolutely.
And maybe like a graphical upgrade, that kind of thing, control upgrade, a camera upgrade,
random
just that
encounter
kind of stuff.
Downgrade.
Yeah, exactly. Fix the music in the GameCube version, and you gotta. But everything else about it, like, this is also, this is like one of the best RPGs ever made by a lot of people's standards. So I'm not convincing anybody here. It's a fantastic game. Go back to it if you have the option to play it on Dreamcast or GameCube, but really cool stuff. Also, let me see here. Got a few minutes to go over little things. There was an arcade PC board of Gunsmoke that was found with robot bosses.
That's crazy.
Did you see this?
I heard.
So, friend of the show, Kurt Collada, referenced this and spread it around. But apparently, there are. So Gunsmoke was like a really fun Capcom game, overhead cowboy game. And apparently, there's a version out there where the bosses are cyborgs, like made to be cyborgs.
Yeah, that just makes me think of Wild Guns.
So you're not killing like a real person.
Yeah.
So people are suspecting. Nobody knows like the exact nature of this PC board because it hasn't been emulated in MAME or anything like that.
Well, maybe it's like Contra. Maybe it was going to be like the European version.
Yeah, so that's the suspicion. The suspicion is that it's possibly a German version of the arcade board, because back then Germany was extremely sensitive, and still kind of are, about violence in video games because of their history. So they one of the ways that they skirted around this was by having robots fight robots. But what's also cool about this is that there are some direct like visual references of these robots to a specific movie poster of Yul Brynner in Westworld.
Gotcha.
Because there's a version of it with his face being removed from like like the flat robot face.
Yeah.
Like the human face being put on it. So it's really neat looking, and it's nice to see that, even that they had to make this concession. They put some effort into making the characters look cool. Along with having to come up with this kind of censorship kind of thing. I actually might even kind of like the conceit of Gunsmoke being made into a Westworld version, because at least it seems less genocidal.
Yeah, right.
Than the original version of the game. But just a couple little things, other things outside of video game things. Fargo Season 4 has a teaser out from it. I am super amped over that. I know you are a fan of the TV show, but you're pretty far behind at this point,
I've
right?
only seen Season 1, yeah.
Yeah, we need to get you on that because season 3 has one of my favorite episodes of anything ever in it. It's really that good. But this one is supposed to take place in Prohibition era.
Huh.
So it may be the first season without Mr. Wrench in it. Because
so is this like, season 1 is the present, season 2 is the past.
No.
Season 3.
Season 1 was slight past. It was like something like 7 years ago at the time.
Well, all right. In that case, let's do this. Season 1 is where we start the series, is what you're centered on. Season 2 is the relative past. Season 3 is a sequel to Season 1. Season 4 is even further past.
No, it goes... first season is like 7 years. I don't know.
Well, Season 3 takes place after Season 1, right?
Season 3 takes place in the 70s, actually.
Oh, so never mind. So we're just in all sorts of...
No. Wait. Season 2 takes place in the 70s.
Okay, yeah, because Season 2 they talk about Sioux Falls, and Season 2 was that.
And then Season 3 takes place after Season 1.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Okay. So you go past, you're going back, forward, further back. So I wonder if Season 5 will go back to forward again.
It's yeah. You're right. So yeah, it's really interesting. It stars Chris Rock, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Always glad to see him, and Jason Schwartzman's apparently in it, which I am all about. That's really cool. I am a huge fan of this series. It's probably my favorite TV series of all time, no joke. And they make it when they feel like it, which is fantastic. That means there are no bad or filler seasons.
Yeah.
It comes out when they are done making it.
Yeah.
Which is the right way to go. That's how they do it in a lot of other places of the world other than right here. And in that same vein, HBO is deciding that the showrunner of Watchmen, after him leaving after season 1, they will not be making a season 2, which that's really cool, especially considering that Watchmen was a very successful show. It was probably like the biggest show that HBO has had since Game of Thrones ended.
Yeah, so it ends on a high note.
And it was one of the best sequels to a story I never wanted a sequel to.
Yeah.
It blew me away how good it was. It was really, really good. And it was made with the help of one of the creators, not the writer, but the artist of the original series. Dave Gibbons was a big part of the creation.
You mean to try to convince me that Alan Moore wasn't on board for the Watchmen adaptation?
So, like a lot of people have basically copped to saying like he's just a cranky old guy who the only reason why he doesn't like this stuff is because he didn't get like the cut that he wanted. And that's the reason why he's being such a baby about it. So I'm okay with him not being involved. He's also a nutcase. As much as I believe me, probably my second or third favorite like comic book series ever is Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series. It is amazing. It's fan-frickin-tastic.
Wait, you mean to tell me Swamp Thing is amazing?
Yes.
Sweet.
He's referencing the Swamp
who's
Thing
gonna
cartoon
get that?
show.
Yeah, I just realized no one's gonna get that.
A Swamp Thing. And they had to change that because it was too literal of a like parody of Wild Thing. But Swamp Thing, his run on Swamp Thing, read it because it is one of the coolest things ever. Just to give you an idea of what happens in it, Swamp Thing goes through like an entire existential crisis that ends in him doing like his own version of Dante's Inferno, which was really fantastic. And then he gets disincorporated from his body after returning from hell, to the point where he has to regrow himself on some other planet, and then find his way home in his own version of the Odyssey.
That's wild.
And it is one of the wildest, like, awesome things that I've ever read. Like, it's existential, it's horrifying, and sometimes kind of funny. Really, really good stuff. And V for Vendetta and Watchmen are unparalleled. They're fantastic. However, the author's a crazy person. Like currently, he's a crazy person. Frank Miller wrote one of my all-time favorite comic books. He is a nutcase. Do not listen to anything that goddamn man says. He is a fucking kook. Just a nutcase. Wrote one of the most racist things I've ever read. Not even just like racist comics. Racist things I've ever read. But he's made like his Daredevil Born Again is life changing. Like if you read that when you were a teenager, you would be like blown away, and you wouldn't think anything was ever better. Dark Knight Returns, same thing, so good. But just don't listen to him currently. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I had been watching The Watchmen. I'd been talking. I was the one who watched The Watchmen. It was really good, worth your time in every way. Fantastic sequel. I just love the fact that they respected it so much that they didn't want to, bring somebody else in and try to capitalize on it. Just to say it. They want to have something good and thought-provoking in order to keep it up. And I hope it doesn't get another sequel. But you know what? I thought that about the original Watchmen.
Yeah, you
so
never
if
know.
Somebody comes up with a season 2 that has political commentary just like this season did, that I didn't even know could be use that framework for, that'd be fantastic. So any last minutes here, Lotus? Any last minute items?
One real quick thing I wanted to mention, just because it's funny, is Saturday Night Live had a new sketch that I thought was very entertaining.
Was it this week's or was it the week before?
I want to say it was this week's.
Okay. Who's the host?
Adam Driver.
Okay. Fantastic episode.
Yeah, so you may recall from a couple of years ago, they had a really funny Star Wars parody. It was based on The Force Awakens, but it was it was a parody of, it was called Undercover Boss, where Adam Driver, the guy who plays Kylo Ren, was supposed to dress up as just like a random low-level worker so he could get the scoop of what's going on among just the random workers in the Death Star, or not the Death Star, but Starkiller Base, and hear what their
it's the Death Star.
It's the Death Star, and hear what their opinions are of them. And it was a really damn funny sketch. So they made a sequel, Undercover Boss. It's another Undercover Boss.
This was quite possibly even funnier.
It really got me. Yeah, he this time he's an intern, so it's kind of more of the same, but that's what we want. You know what really got me? Is in the first sketch, his delivery is very awkward. You could tell Kylo Ren doesn't talk to people. And it's I can get to know some folks. It's just it's really awkward and uncomfortable when he talks. So they took that and ran with it in the second sketch, where it's almost like an alien listening to humans. I know what they say, I just may not know why they say it. So he just introduces himself. He's like, "Hi, everybody. I'm Randy, a new intern. Okay, boomer. Okay, boomer." Just a random people. I'm like, what the fuck? It's the funniest thing. That really took me by surprise. And they're like, thanks? It's hysterical. He just opens by saying, "Okay, boomer," to nobody had said anything. What are you saying okay to? It really got me. It's funny as hell. So yeah, it's another really funny Undercover Boss sketch.
Yeah.
I don't really watch SNL, but those sketches have me rolling. Definitely look them up.
I also, while you're saying that, I have to mention how good SNL has been, like, this lately. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
more
been
recently, yeah, they've
really,
really come
really,
back in a
really
big way.
good. Did you see the Eddie Murphy episode as well?
No, I did not.
The one before this was the Eddie Murphy episode.
Okay.
It was literally one of the best episodes of SNL that I've ever seen.
Okay.
It was really funny. They brought back a lot of his old characters, but he was on point with everything. Like, you could tell, like, he's just like, okay, I'm tired of this Norbit shit. Like,
Norbit.
I want people to love me again. Like, he genuinely he pulled out all the stops. You know what I mean?
So he pitched the long-awaited sequel to the Adventures of Pluto Nash.
Yeah, you could tell, like, he was just like, okay, I'm ready for people to pay attention to me again, and he was fantastic. But more than that, like, Colin Jost and Michael Che are like the head writers, and they're weekend update guys, and during this and the Adam Driver episode were two of the funniest weekend updates that I've ever seen.
Great.
They were really, really, really good. Like, Eddie Murphy did his Gumby character during his one, and it was one of the funniest things because he puts on this, like, New York Brooklyn Jew accent while he's impersonating Gumby.
All right.
Like, yeah, he could be literally any other character, but they make him dress up as Gumby.
It's so stupid.
But with that voice, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen him do. And also what was really funny is after that, Colin Jost and Michael Che had this thing where they were like, at the end of the year, they apparently have this tradition of writing jokes for the other person to say.
Oh yeah, I saw a little bit of that in a sketch from a while ago where, like, John Mulaney was one of the people in the sketch, but you could clearly tell that one of the lines, like, somebody else was saying, was written to, like, see if it could get him to corpse.
Oh, it's 100% that. Michael Che
The
loves...
reason I mentioned John Mulaney is that he wrote the lines, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, John Mulaney is, like, one of the best guests of SNL ever because he was one of the best writers for that show to begin with. But
yeah,
like, his episodes are really legendary too. But
did you see the sketch? What's that? Or what? Yeah, what's that name?
No.
It is the most uncomfortable fucking sketch, and it is a laugh riot. Like, it's a game show where it's like, see if you can guess that name, and, you know, like, here's this, you know, rapper you may recognize from 10 years ago, and here's his, like, wife. Do you know the name? Like, maybe. And then it's John Mulaney's turn, and, you know, his friend walks in like, hi, like, I'm your best friend. Like, hey, buddy, and I'm his girlfriend. Hi, great to see you. It is supremely uncomfortable. It's like, for $500, what's her name? You've known her for like 4 years. Like, oh fuck. Like, it's brutal, and it is the funniest thing.
So John Mulaney has this habit recently of doing, like, a musical segment when he comes on, and the first one was a guy ordering lobster at a diner.
Okay.
And Kenan Thompson dresses up as the lobster and starts singing, like, Jean Valjean songs because, like, you know, who orders lobster at a fucking diner? Like,
okay,
like, and he's just like, oh, I finally get out, you know, like, out of jail.
What a concept.
Yeah, and then the second one is a musical, like, exploration of the New York bodega. Which,
see, like, that is one thing I kind of like about
so funny.
Well, that is one thing I like about SNL. Topical humor is really funny, obviously, especially at the time. But what also is really funny about SNL is just, like, the
random
weird
bullshit
shit they come up with.
Random bullshit, yeah.
Like, my dad loves bringing this one up. Did you ever see, like, the old-timey horror movie with, like, the dripping green text, like, from the 1950s?
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
The Thing That Wouldn't Leave?
Sure.
Do you know what that one is?
I I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, the thing that wouldn't leave. This is back in the John Belushi days. So it's like, with the organ music, like for like the title, like the thing that wouldn't leave, with like the drippy green text from like really old timey horror movies. But it's just people having a house party, and everyone leaves, and John Belushi's just not taking the fucking hint. And he's just like, so, like, is there anything on? There's a movie I want to watch. He just turns on the TV, like, I'll invite some friends over. I think they would enjoy this. And the woman does the old movie scream with, like, her hands on her head and the overacting, like, ah! Like, it's, like, the old bad acting. It was really funny. It's done like this horror movie. It's like, why won't he get the fuck out of my house?
Like the melodrama.
It's great.
One last thing, because this is a breaking news event. Lotus, you are going to be psyched.
Okay.
This just broke from our friends, Twinbeard Inc.
No kidding?
Frog Fractions Game of the Decade Edition has been announced for Steam.
Like Frog Fractions 1?
Mid to late 2020. Frog Fractions 1.
That's significant, because that game, I mean, you can still play it now, but it's not downloadable. You can't just have it. You can play it, but you can't have it. So, like, how long is the Flash game going to last? So that's great.
So, about this game, the classic web game remastered as a native executable.
Beautiful.
In Frog Fractions, the player controls a frog sitting on a lily pad.
Even if it weren't remastered, like, make it an executable file, please.
If you take a look at each of the screens, they are from the part of the game that you think the rest of the game is.
Nice.
So they're keeping the illusion up, let's just say that.
Okay.
But I figured you'd be excited about that, because I certainly was.
Just on principle, like a game, a probably more stable version of the game, and it's executable. Yeah,
that game is one of the funniest things that I've ever experienced in my life.
It's like an hour and a half long, and it will change your life.
Especially learning about boxing was my favorite.
I believe you mean learning about fractions. You get it's an entertainment game. You get all sorts of knowledge about fractions. Sometimes scientific notation. You get all sorts of math knowledge. That's all you'll ever need. That's all the game has. That's all the game is.
It's kind of like Number Munchers.
Yeah, you just feel yourself getting smarter as you play Frog Fractions.
Yeah. Oh, man. More on that later.
Yes.
But we will catch everybody for a more in-depth discussion about the Goemon controversy on Thursday. We'll stay tuned for that, and we'll catch everybody then. That is the show for this week. You can please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes, and throw some nickels at your old buddy Lotus
Throw
Prince.
A coin to your podcaster. Topical reference.
It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. He only looks slightly better than Henry Cavill in the bath.
Throw a coin to the podcast.
They need it more than The Witcher does, trust me. You can also catch us on Thursday for a sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on anything you like.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, I only just started Shadow Tower on the PS1. There's a game that you haven't heard the name of in a long time.
Is that from Software?
Yeah.
It's actually from Software?
I believe so, and it says Age Tech as well. And they've introduced weight now, like Demon Souls style. Like your equipment has weight, so you don't necessarily want to equip the best armor because it's heavy. So and we have weapon and armor durability now, so that's cool too. And by that I mean frustrating. in a fucking Kingsfield style game. So yeah, you're getting exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, and getting in discussions with me and other patrons on Discord. Perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
All right, everybody. We'll catch everybody on Thursday for another fantastic episode of Corrective. We'll catch you then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.